I had an old mini engine on a Trike that basically had been left up on. We left it up on top of a container for about 2 years, and when I came to bring it down and wanted to sort of turn it over and get it going, it was completely seized up. I went on YouTube and I had a look at all the different methods for unseizing an engine without physically having to take it to bits, because it wasn't worth taking the engine to pieces and having to get new gaskets for it and everything. So I just thought I'd give it a go, and it started about 6 months ago. I put diesel in it. I filled it up with diesel. That didn't work. I tried filling it up with brake fluid. That didn't work. Somebody suggested acetone and automatic transmission fluid. Tried that, didn't work. Tried white spirit, tried everything I could think of, and each time leaving it for a couple of weeks to see if it would free it up. It didn't. It was still completely seized up. I even tried towing it on a towing dolly and just putting it into, just having it in gear and just pulling it up the road, and all I ended up with was 2 black lines all the way up the road where it was completely seized up, wouldn't turn at all. I just suddenly had an idea. I thought, what about if I tried a porta power, a normal garage porta power, and made a modification for it so that I could take one of the spark plugs out, or take all the spark plugs out, and put it in one of the spark plugs, fill the spark plug up with oil, and then use the porta power to pump the piston down. So anyway, this is what I did. I made a very simple modification using, it's just a water fitting with a 1/2-inch British standard pipe on the end of it, which fits okay in a standard size, in a 21 spark plug. If it's okay with a copper washer on, I could pull it down tight enough. It wouldn't damage the thread because it's brass, and I could pull it down tight enough with a copper washer that it would make a good seal. So then I just basically connected it to my 10-ton porta power. I took the rocker cover off the Trike so that I could just see. It was a mini engine, an A-series engine, I think out of a Metro or something like that. And I took the rocker cover off so that I could see which cylinder was on rock and which cylinder was on compression stroke. And then I took all the spark plugs out and screwed my adapter into the cylinder that was on the compression stroke, so both valves were closed. I filled it up, first of all, with automatic transmission fluid, filled up the cylinder, and then I filled up the porta power with automatic transmission fluid and pumped it, and sure enough, within a few strokes it started to move. The engine started to turn over, and I could not get that engine to turn over no matter what I did to it. It was absolutely seized up solid. It wasn't heat seized, it was just rust seized. And I pushed it all the way down to the bottom of the bore using that method. Then I took that spark plug out and moved to the next piston, which was at top dead center with both valves closed. Filled that one up and repeated the same. So I got the engine to turn right over. I got the engine to do a whole revolution. Then once I got it loose enough that I could turn it on the crank bolt, I just turned the engine over a few times until it loosened up. The rust and crud that came out of the cylinders when I was turning it over was quite something to see. But I kept on, persevered with it, and eventually got it so it would turn over on the starter motor. Now today I've put fresh oil in it. I've drained all the oil and crud and crap that had been, I'd even tried putting Coca-Cola in it because someone said that might shift it. So you can imagine what I had to let out of the sump when I'd eventually got the thing freed up. And put fresh oil in it, the fresh oil filter, cleaned it all out, and fired it up today. It runs fine. It runs perfectly okay. So that's the only way I've ever discovered that you can unseize an engine and literally have it so that it works, so you don't need to do anything more to it. The compression ratio on all 4 cylinders is fine. The engine has literally survived it, and that's the only way that I've ever seen it be successful. I can't see any reason why this wouldn't work for V8 engines, V6 engines, whatever configuration you've got. This particular one was a 4-cylinder, so I knew that basically the 2 center cylinders come up together, the 2 outside cylinders come up together. That's the engine really. But you'd have exactly the same. You'd be able to do exactly the same with an 8-cylinder engine. You'd just have to locate which pistons were at the top and which of the pistons were actually on the compression stroke, and then that would be the piston you would start with to push down. And then once you'd got that one to go down, you'd see which of the other bank had come up to top dead center and which of those was on the compression stroke, which would be both valves closed, and then you'd pump that one down. And literally, this is the gentlest, most unobtrusive way that I think you'll ever unseize an engine, because you're literally doing what the gas would do. You're just pushing the piston down. You're just using hydraulics to push the piston down rather than the expansion of the gas. So you're not putting pressure on, you're not putting undue pressure on any other part of the engine. Whereas if you're trying to turn it by the crank, you're putting an awful lot of pressure onto the rings, the ring grooves, and and all the bearings and the crank. Whereas this is literally just, you're literally just doing what the engine would do if it was running. I picked up this heap of a mini trike about 2 years ago, and it was actually turning over and running okay. Got it running, and then I stuck it up on top of the container because I didn't have anything I wanted to do with it at the time. And it sat up there for the last 2 years. When we got it down, the engine was seized up solid. It wasn't heat seized, it was just, it had got water in it and it had gone rusty and it completely seized up solid. I looked on YouTube and I got all the different ideas from people on YouTube of how to unseize an engine. I put acetone and oil in it. I put even tried Coca-Cola in it to see whether we could unseize, whether we could get the rust off the rings and unseize the engine. And absolutely nothing we did would help. I left it full of diesel for 2 or 3 months and it was still completely seized up solid. I even tried putting it in gear and towing it up the road, and all I ended up doing was laying 2 great big black marks on the road, and he still wouldn't unseize. And I just came up with the idea of seeing if a porta power would do it. And what I did was I took the spark plugs out and I took the rocket cover off just to see which cylinder was at top dead center and which one was on the compression stroke. And then I made this adapter, which is, it's just a 1/2 inch BSP plug onto an adapter that will go onto the end of my porta power. And what I did was, this is not a spark plug thread, but it's near enough to be able to hold just to do this. And what I did was I took the spark plugs out, and the spark plug, the bore that was on the cylinder that was on top dead center on the compression stroke, I screwed this adapter in, put the porta power in, pumped it up until it filled the bore with hydraulic fluid, or I actually did it with automatic transmission fluid, kept on refilling the porta power so it could keep on pumping, and just carried on pumping, and then all of a sudden, bang, the engine started turning over. It took me 2 or 3 times of bringing it up, swapping over plugs and doing the next plug that was on compression stroke, but eventually I completely freed up the engine and the engine's now perfectly working. So that is basically the only way I've ever found that you can unseize an engine without completely taking it to pieces.